It's all fine that we have our settings view controller and our settings view nib file, but how do we initialize and set up the modal view style? And that's what we're going to do now. We're going to initialize the modal view, set it up, and this is also how the view controller for the main view, MyPad World View Controller, will know about the new speed setting and change it accordingly. So in order to use these controllers and this nib file as a modal view, we need to initialize it and set it up. And we do that in MyPad World View Controller. We modify the code in both the header and the implementation file to add the method for initializing and setting up the modal view when the user taps the light info button. And we also add the code to change the speed. The first thing we do is we go to the header file and we need to import the settings view controller. So we do that with an import, and it already knows the name and helps us fill it out. And so what we're going to do is modify the declarations here to include the settings view controller declarations, and we're going to add the settings view controller delegate protocol so that we can use the delegates methods from the main view controller, the MyPad World View Controller. So here, right after UI V controller, we put in the delegate controller, settings view controller delegate. That way we are now adopting the protocols of the settings view controller delegate. And now we get to declare that we're going to use those delegates methods. We're going to declare them here. Change speed, double new speed. That's one. The other one is settings view controller. And you notice that Xcode's code completion has really completed just about all of it for us. And that's because it just picked up the protocol from the settings view controller.h file. So we've now declared the change speed and settings view controller did finish with change methods. Now we're going to add the code to initialize the modal view. In the MyPad World View Controller implementation file, we can jump to it quickly, the controls section, which is right here, and our IB action settings method. The settings method will initialize the modal view. So the first thing we'll do is initialize that view inside the settings method. Settings view controller is the controller, alloc to allocate it, and initialize with nib name settings view controller, and the bundle is nil. So that initializes the settings view controller. Now we need to use something from the UI view controller class. It's the modal transition style property to set the transition to use when the modal view appears. So controller modal transition style is UI modal transition style. Now we have a bunch of choices here. For example, we could choose partial curl, in which one corner of the current view curls up to reveal the modal view underneath. And then when the user leaves the modal view, the current view uncurls to its original position. But I think what we want to use for this is a flip horizontal, which does a horizontal 3D flip from right to left, which is a fairly standard transition. Now we're going to do the controller modal presentation style. The presentation style property that specifies the appearance of the modal view on the iPad. The options for this property let you present the modal view so that it fills the entire iPad display or only part of the display. We're going to use UI modal, and you can see all the presentation styles appearing in a menu for us to choose from. We're actually going to choose form sheet. The others were full screen, which uses the entire display, which is good for something that is complex, such as maybe choosing a Genius mix from your music playlists in the iPod app. Another one is page sheet, which offers a fixed width of 768 points. The sheet height is the current height of the display. In portrait, the page sheet view covers the entire display. In landscape, the area of the display that is visible on both sides of the page sheet view is dimmed to prevent user interaction. Some apps use this style for composing a text message or note. Current context is an option that uses the same size as its parent view. This style is good for displaying a modal view within a split view pane, popover, or other view that doesn't fill the display. In other words, if the parent doesn't fill the display, then the modal view will use the same size as the parent view and stay within the confines of the parent view, which is very good for a split view or popover. But we decided to use form sheet. The form sheet is a fixed dimension view of 540 by 620 points centered in the display. The area of the display that is visible outside the form sheet view is dimmed to prevent user interaction. This is pretty much the same type of presentation as used for the Flipboard app, which I showed earlier. So we've chosen form sheet for the presentation style, and now we're going to set the controller delegate to self. Now we're going to use the present modal view controller animated method to present the animated modal view and attach it to the view hierarchy. We do that with self present modal view controller animated yes, close bracket, paren. Finally, we're going to release the controller when we're finished with it. So we've now used the settings method to initialize the modal view. It sets the modal transition style property to flip horizontal. It sets the modal presentation style property to form sheet. Then it presents the modal view controller with the animated transition. So we're now ready to move on and save the preference settings.